Most people think they know Cenat. To millions, he's the loud, unstoppable energy on stream, shouting at the top of his lungs, dancing like nobody's watching, turning even the smallest moments into viral chaos. That's the Kai the world recognizes. But what almost nobody knows is that there was a night, years ago, when he showed a side of himself that never made it to YouTube or Twitch. No cameras, no chat spamming emotes, no clipped highlights. Just one quiet, forgotten street in New York City, and a decision that would change another man's life forever. It was late. The city still buzzed, but the sidewalks were mostly empty. Kai had just wrapped up a long day, hoodie pulled up over his head, headphones dangling around his neck. He wasn't looking for attention. He wanted to disappear into the crowd, the way only a native New Yorker knows how. That's when he noticed him, a man sitting hunched against the wall of a closed shop, knees pulled tight to his chest. At first, Kai barely slowed down. In New York, you learn early not to stop. Everyone's in a rush. Everyone has somewhere to be, and the sight of someone down on their luck becomes background noise you force yourself to ignore. But there was something different this time. The man wasn't holding out a cup, wasn't begging or shouting. Instead, he sat completely still, staring down at a small, faded photograph in his hands, as if the whole world around him didn't exist. Kai kept walking. 10 steps. 15. He told himself it wasn't his business, that people pass scenes like this every night. But with every step, the image burned deeper into his mind. The trembling hands, the hollow eyes, the picture clutched like it was the last piece of a life long gone. By the 20th step, Kai stopped. He stood there, fighting with himself, the voice in his head telling him to just go home. But another voice, quieter, harder to ignore, whispered that if he walked away now, he would regret it. He turned back. Kai pulled down his hood and walked toward the man. He didn't know what he was going to say, or even if the man would answer him. All he knew was that this wasn't going to be one more night where he pretended not to see. This was the beginning of a story almost nobody knows. A story that would prove Cenat was far more than the chaos people saw online. Kai stood a few feet away, unsure how to begin. The man didn't even notice him at first. His eyes were glued to that photograph, the city lights reflecting off the glossy, worn edges. For a moment, Kai thought about turning back again. What if the man didn't want to talk? What if he got angry? But then, almost without thinking, the words slipped out. "You good, bro?" Kai's voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. The man looked up, startled. His eyes were tired, sunken, but there was something behind them, a depth Kai couldn't ignore. He gave a small shake of his head, as if brushing off the question, and muttered, "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." But Kai didn't move. He noticed the man quickly trying to tuck the photograph away, almost like he was hiding it. That only made Kai more curious. "What's that you got there?" he asked, pointing slightly. The man hesitated, then slowly held it out. It was a photo, old and bent at the corners, of a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, smiling wide with 2 missing front teeth. The man's hand trembled as he passed it over, his voice breaking as he whispered, "That's my son. Haven't seen him in years." Something in Kai's chest tightened. This wasn't just another stranger on the street. This was a father who had lost everything. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city buzzed in the distance, cars honking, people shouting from across the block, but in that small circle of sidewalk, the world felt silent. Kai handed the photo back carefully, as if it was made of glass. "How'd you end up out here?" he asked quietly. The man sighed, pulling his thin jacket tighter around himself. "Life got messy. Lost my job. Couldn't keep up with bills. One mistake led to another. Before I knew it, this was it." He gestured weakly around him, the cold pavement, the empty night. Kai didn't interrupt. He just listened. And for once, he wasn't thinking about clips or reactions or how things would look online. He was thinking about the man in front of him, a stranger who carried more pain than most people could imagine. The man gave a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "Most people walk past. They don't see me. Or maybe they don't want to. But why'd you stop?" Kai didn't have an answer. At least, not one he could explain. He just shrugged and said, "Felt like I had to." And in that moment, for reasons he couldn't fully understand, Kai knew this wasn't going to be a short conversation. This wasn't going to be one of those encounters you forget by morning. Something about this man's story was about to change everything. The man shifted uncomfortably, pulling his knees closer to his chest, as if the memories themselves were too heavy to carry. Kai stayed quiet, giving him space, but his eyes never left the man's face. Something told him that this stranger hadn't had anyone truly listen to him in a long time. "My name's Marcus," the man finally said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "I wasn't always like this." He looked down at the photograph again, his thumb brushing the edges as if it could somehow bring his son back. "I used to work construction. Good money, steady work. I wasn't rich, but I took care of my family. My boy, he loved soccer. Every Saturday, I'd take him to the park. We'd play until the sun went down. That was my life. That was everything." His words cracked, the images of the past colliding with the reality of the present. Kai leaned in, listening closely. "But then the company cut jobs," Marcus continued. "I thought I'd bounce back quick. I didn't. Bills started piling up. Rent, medical stuff. It just snowballed. I tried to hide it from my family at first. Told them I was figuring it out. But one missed payment turned into two. And then," he paused, his eyes glistening with shame. "One day they were gone. My wife packed up and left. Took my boy with her. Said she couldn't do it anymore." He let out a shaky breath, his hands gripping the photograph like it was the only piece of that life he had left. Kai felt a lump forming in his throat. He had expected maybe a short answer, something about hard times or bad luck. But this was years of pain condensed into a single night's conversation. Marcus gave a hollow laugh. "People look at me now and just see trash. A drunk, a junkie, whatever story they make up in their heads. But the truth is, I was just a guy who fell behind. And once you fall behind in this city, it's hard to catch up." Kai stayed silent for a moment, the weight of the man's story pressing down on him. He thought about how easily it could have been someone he knew, a cousin, a neighbor, even himself if life had gone differently. Finally, Kai said quietly, "That's not trash. That's life hitting too hard. And the fact you're still standing here, still holding on to that picture, that's strength." Marcus looked at him with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Maybe it had been years since anyone had called him strong. For Kai, the decision was becoming clearer with every passing second. This wasn't just a conversation to be forgotten tomorrow. This was the start of something much bigger. Kai sat there for a moment, the city noise filling the silence between them. A bus rumbled past, headlights sweeping over the sidewalk, and Marcus instinctively pulled his jacket tighter as if hiding from the world. Kai noticed the way people walking by avoided even glancing in their direction. To them, Marcus was invisible. But Kai couldn't unsee him now. He couldn't pretend Marcus was just another shadow on the street. "You eaten today?" Kai asked suddenly. Marcus gave a half-smile, the kind that wasn't really a smile at all. "Not really. Doesn't matter." "It does," Kai said firmly, already standing up. He motioned with his head. "Come on, let's grab something." Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "You don't have to." Kai cut him off. "I know I don't have to, but I want to." For a moment, Marcus hesitated. Years of being ignored and dismissed had taught him not to trust easily. But there was something in Kai's tone, not pity, not condescension, just simple determination. Slowly, Marcus pushed himself up, clutching the photograph in one hand like a lifeline. They walked together down the block, the city buzzing around them. Kai kept glancing over, noticing how Marcus walked with a slight limp, how he flinched whenever someone brushed past too close. He looked fragile, like the world had been pushing him down for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand tall. They stopped at a corner store. Kai grabbed bottles of water, sandwiches, fruit, even some warm socks from a rack by the counter. Marcus tried to protest, muttering about it being too much, but Kai waved him off. "Man, it's nothing. Don't worry about the money. Just eat." Sitting on the curb outside, Marcus unwrapped the sandwich with shaky hands. The first bite made his eyes close, as though he hadn't tasted real food in weeks. Kai watched quietly, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and anger. Satisfaction that Marcus was finally eating, anger that the world had let him fall this far. "This ain't right," Kai muttered under his breath. Marcus looked up. "What isn't?" Kai leaned back, exhaling hard. "The fact you're out here. The fact nobody stopped before tonight. You shouldn't be sitting on the ground in the cold with your life in a plastic bag. That's not how your story's supposed to end." Marcus stared at him, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to him like that. And in that moment, Kai felt the shift inside him. This wasn't going to be a one-night gesture. He knew he couldn't just walk away after this. Feeding Marcus was only the first step. Something bigger had to happen. Something that would give Marcus more than just a meal. It had to give him back a chance. When Marcus finished the sandwich, he sat back against the wall of the store, clutching the water bottle like it was the most precious thing he owned. His shoulders seemed to relax for the first time that night. But his eyes still carried the same heaviness, the kind that food alone couldn't erase. Kai noticed it. He noticed the way Marcus's gaze drifted past the busy street, as if searching for something that wasn't there. He noticed the way people still passed by, their eyes sliding over him like he didn't exist, even though he was sitting right there. And in that moment, Kai realized the truth. One meal wasn't going to fix years of pain. One good deed wouldn't erase a lifetime of setbacks. Kai leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "So what's next for you?" he asked carefully. Marcus gave a tired laugh, shaking his head. "Next? There is no next. I wake up, I walk around, I try to stay warm, I try to find food. That's it. That's the whole plan." Kai sat back, the words hitting him harder than he expected. For Marcus, survival had become the only horizon. No dreams, no long-term goals, just making it through the day. Kai's chest tightened. He thought about his own life, about how much he'd been blessed with. He had millions of followers, money, opportunities. And yet here was a man who couldn't even imagine tomorrow being different from today. That thought gnawed at him. "Man, that ain't living." Kai muttered, more to himself than to Marcus. Marcus tilted his head, curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean..." Kai hesitated, then spoke with more force. "I mean you don't deserve this. Nobody does. You're sitting here like this is the end of your story, but it doesn't have to be. You still got chapters left, bro." Marcus chuckled again, this time softer, almost sad. "Easy for you to say. You've got a life. You've got people watching you. Me? I got nothing." Kai shook his head. "Nah, you got me. And I'm not about to walk away and let this be the end." For a long moment, Marcus stared at him, trying to figure out if he meant it. He'd heard empty promises before, quick words from people who disappeared as fast as they arrived. But something about Kai's tone, the fire in his eyes, told him this was different. Kai's mind was already racing ahead. Food and clothes were good for tonight, but tomorrow Marcus would still be on the same street. He needed more than charity. He needed a chance. A real one. Kai pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts, ideas forming faster than he could process them. He didn't know exactly how yet, but he knew this. He wasn't going to leave Marcus on that sidewalk. Not tonight. Not ever. Kai's phone screen glowed in the night as his thumb flew across the apps. He wasn't streaming, he wasn't tweeting, he wasn't doing any of the things millions expected of him online. He was searching for something immediate, something real. Marcus watched him with confusion. "What are you doing?" "Finding you a place to sleep tonight." Kai answered without looking up. Marcus shook his head quickly. No, you don't have to do that. I'll be fine. I always figure it out." Kai lowered the phone, meeting his eyes. "Nah, bro. You just told me your whole plan is survive the night. That's not good enough anymore. Not after tonight." Marcus opened his mouth to argue again, but Kai's tone left no space for debate. It wasn't pity in his voice. It was certainty. Within minutes, Kai had called a small hotel nearby. His name carried weight. Even at 2 a.m, a desk clerk agreed to set aside a room. Kai stood, motioning for Marcus to follow. "Come on. Let's go." The walk to the hotel felt surreal. Marcus shuffled beside him, clutching the photograph and the small bag of food like treasures. Every step closer to the glowing entrance made him uneasy. "They're not gonna let me in," he muttered under his breath. "People see me like this, they'll just throw me out." Kai stopped in front of the door, turning to face him. "Listen, you're walking in there with me. Nobody's throwing you out. Not while I'm here." Inside, the receptionist glanced up, eyes widening as soon as they recognized Kai. For a moment, Marcus froze, expecting the usual dismissal. But instead, the clerk smiled, slid over a key card, and said, "Room's ready, Mr. Cenat." Marcus stared at the shiny piece of plastic in Kai's hand like it was some kind of miracle. This is for me," he whispered. Kai nodded, pressing it into his palm. "Yeah, tonight, you're not sleeping on the street. Not anymore." When they reached the room, Marcus stepped inside cautiously, as if afraid the walls might collapse. The soft bed, the clean sheets, The warm light, it was overwhelming. He sat on the edge of the mattress, burying his face in his hands. For a long time, he didn't say anything. Finally, his voice cracked through the silence. "You don't even know me. Why are you doing this?" Kai leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his tone steady but warm. "Because somebody's got to believe in you. And if nobody else will, then I will." Marcus wiped at his eyes, trying to hide the tears that wouldn't stop. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking at another endless night on the sidewalk. He was looking at the first glimpse of hope. And for Kai, that wasn't nearly enough. This was just the beginning. The hotel room was quiet, but Kai's mind wasn't. He sat in the corner chair, scrolling on his phone, while Marcus slowly drifted between disbelief and exhaustion. Every time Marcus looked around, at the clean sheets, the warm lamp, the running water in the bathroom, it was like he couldn't trust any of it to be real. Kai watched him carefully. The man looked fragile, but not broken. Not yet. He still had something left inside him, something that could be rebuilt if someone just gave him the tools. Kai leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You ever think about getting back on your feet?" he asked. Marcus laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "All the time. But thinking don't change much when you don't got ID, don't got an address, don't got a clean shirt to show up in. World don't give second chances, man. Not like that." Kai nodded slowly. He knew Marcus wasn't wrong, but he also knew he couldn't leave things there. Not after tonight. "You said the world don't give second chances," Kai said firmly. "So maybe it's time somebody did." Marcus looked up, confused. Kai continued. "One night in a hotel is cool, but it's not enough. You need more than that. You need a way to start over. And I think I can help." Marcus stared at him, disbelief painted across his face. "Why? Why me? You don't owe me nothing. You don't even know me." Kai leaned back, shaking his head. "You're right. I don't know you. But I know one thing. I'm not going to walk away and pretend this never happened. Not when I can actually do something about it." The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. The weight of Kai's words hung heavy, settling deep into Marcus's chest. For years, nobody had spoken to him like that. With conviction, with belief. Marcus swallowed hard, gripping the photograph of his son tighter than ever. For the first time in a long time, the thought crossed his mind. Maybe this wasn't the end of his story. Maybe this was the moment it started again. And Kai, sitting across from him, was already planning how to make that happen. The next morning, Kai was already on his phone before Marcus even opened his eyes. He had made calls, searched contacts, and by the time Marcus sat up, Kai had a plan. "First things first," Kai said, tossing him a bag. Inside was a set of new clothes, simple but clean. "You can't rebuild your life looking like yesterday. You start fresh, you look fresh." Marcus ran his hands over the fabric, almost in disbelief. "Nobody's ever done this for me." Kai smiled. "Get used to it. We're just getting started." Later that day, Kai walked him to a community office where volunteers help people replace lost IDs and documents. Marcus hesitated at the door, but Kai gave him a reassuring nod. "One step at a time, bro. This is how we move forward." As Marcus filled out the forms, his hands trembling slightly, Kai sat beside him the whole time. It wasn't just about money. It was about presence, about showing Marcus that someone actually believed he could stand back up. And deep down, Marcus started to believe it too. By the time the paperwork was done, Marcus looked exhausted but different. The weight on his shoulders hadn't disappeared, but for the first time in years he had something in his hand that represented possibility, a form that meant his name and identity were about to be restored. Kai clapped him on the back. "That's step one. Now we go bigger." Marcus frowned. "Bigger? Man, you've already done more than anyone in years. You don't gotta keep." Kai cut him off, shaking his head. "Stop saying that. I don't gotta. I want to. One night in a hotel? That's nothing. New clothes? That's just the start. You said you lost everything, right? Then we're building it back. Piece by piece." Marcus stared at him like he was crazy. "You don't understand. It's not just about clothes or ID. I haven't worked in years. Who's gonna hire me? People see me and think I'm done. Finished." Kai leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. "Then we're gonna show them you're not finished. You're not a lost cause. You're a man who got knocked down and stood back up. And if no one wants to give you a chance, I will." Marcus blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Kai grinned. "I got connections. Friends who run businesses, people who can open doors. And if none of that works, I'll put you on my own payroll until you're steady. Work with my team. Learn the ropes. You'll earn your way back, and this time you won't be alone. Marcus's jaw dropped, his eyes wide. He had expected a hot meal, maybe a little cash. He hadn't expected someone to sit there and rewrite the script of his life. You serious? He whispered. Kai nodded without hesitation. Dead serious. You said the world doesn't give second chances? Fine. Then I'll give you yours. But you gotta promise me something. Marcus leaned in. What's that? You don't quit on yourself again. You don't waste this. Because I can get you the start, but the rest, that's on you. Marcus's throat tightened, emotion threatening to choke him. He held the photograph of his son against his chest, tears gathering in his eyes. If you do this, if you really do this, maybe I can be someone he's proud of again. Kai nodded, his voice softer now. That's exactly the point. In that moment, it wasn't about a streamer helping a stranger anymore. It was about a man giving another man the chance to rebuild everything he thought was gone forever. Weeks passed since that night on the sidewalk, and the changes in Marcus were already undeniable. What had started as a warm bed for one night had grown into something much bigger, something Marcus himself could barely comprehend. He wasn't the invisible figure on the street anymore. With new clothes on his back, documents finally being processed, and a roof over his head, he carried himself differently. People on the street no longer brushed past him with the same dismissive glances. He looked like a man on his way somewhere, not just another shadow clinging to survival. But Kai wasn't satisfied with just small progress. To him, helping Marcus meant more than giving him shelter and food. He wanted to make sure Marcus had the tools to stand on his own, permanently. So one morning, Kai showed up at the apartment with a plan. He took Marcus to several stores, buying him clothes not only for everyday comfort, but also a crisp suit and shoes fit for job interviews. Marcus stared at himself in the mirror of the fitting room, and for a moment, he couldn't recognize the man looking back. For years, the mirror had shown him a broken reflection, tired eyes, torn jackets, dirt-stained shirts. Now, in clean fabric and polished shoes, he saw possibility. He saw dignity. As they left the store, Marcus tried to speak, his voice trembling. Kai, this is too much. I don't even know how to thank you. I don't deserve. Kai cut him off immediately. Don't say that. Don't ever say you don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a shot at getting back on their feet. You just needed someone to remind you what that feels like. Over the next days, Kai made calls to people he trusted, friends who ran small businesses, managers, and even organizations that helped men like Marcus re-enter the workforce. It wasn't easy. Marcus had gaps in his history, no recent references, and plenty of reasons for employers to look the other way. But Kai refused to let doors close. He kept pushing, kept calling, making it clear that Marcus wasn't just another resume at the bottom of the pile. He was someone worth believing in. Through it all, Marcus tried to keep up, though he was still overwhelmed. He wasn't used to people fighting for him. At night, sitting at the small table in his new apartment, he would hold the photograph of his son, thinking about what Kai had said, that his story didn't have to end on the street. For the first time, he started to believe it. He even began to imagine a future where his son might look at him with pride instead of pity. That thought alone kept him moving. Kai visited often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with Marcus and talking about the little things. But each time, he reminded Marcus of the same promise. We're not stopping halfway. You're going to walk into a place, shake someone's hand, and get a real shot. And when that happens, I'll be right there. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Marcus was no longer simply existing day by day. He was preparing, step by step, for a return to the world he thought had left him behind. And Kai, the streamer known for chaos and laughter, was quietly proving that his biggest act wasn't for content or views, but for a stranger who now had a reason to believe again. Months rolled by, and the man Kai had once found shivering on a cold New York sidewalk was almost unrecognizable. Marcus had slowly, but surely, stepped into a new version of himself. With the fresh clothes, the new ID, and Kai's relentless support, he started showing up to job interviews. At first, it was terrifying, sitting across from managers, being asked about years that were nothing but blank space. Each time he felt like running, like leaving the chair empty. But Kai never let him face those moments alone. Before every interview, Kai would call or stop by, sometimes just to say, "You've already beaten worse." This is nothing compared to what you've survived. Finally, one afternoon, Marcus walked out of an interview not with rejection in his hands, but with an offer. It wasn't glamorous, just a warehouse job, but to Marcus it felt like a golden ticket. His first paycheck in years was small by most standards, but he stared at it for a long time, holding it the way he once held the photograph of his son, carefully, as though it might disappear. Kai celebrated with him like it was a championship win. They went out for a quiet dinner, no cameras, no social media. Just two men, clinking glasses of soda, laughing over the absurdity of how they'd met. "Man," Marcus said, shaking his head, "if I hadn't stopped on that corner. If you hadn't turned back." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Both of them knew how close his story had been to ending in silence. As weeks turned to months, Marcus saved up, moved into a small but steady apartment, and began sending letters to reconnect with his son. The first reply he got back was short, hesitant, but it was something. For Marcus, it was hope. For Kai, it was proof that everything they had fought for was worth it. One evening, Marcus invited Kai over to his new place. It wasn't much, a couch, a lamp, a few photos on the wall, but it was his. When Kai stepped inside, Marcus stood tall, holding out the letter from his son. "He wants to see me," he said, his voice breaking. "After all these years, he actually wants to see me." Kai's grin was wide, but his voice was quiet, steady. "That's all you, man. You're the one who did the work. I just made sure you didn't give up before you got here." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the journey hanging between them. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been fast, but it was real. And in a world where so many stories like Marcus's ended tragically, this one had found light. Kai never went public with the full story. He never turned it into content, never bragged about it online. To him, it wasn't about the headlines or the clout. It was about the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had helped rewrite a man's life when no one else would. And for Marcus, it was simple. A stranger had stopped on the street one night, and instead of walking away, he gave him a second chance. That act of kindness didn't just change his situation. It saved his life. Sometimes heroism doesn't look like fireworks or applause. Sometimes it looks like one man turning around, saying, "I believe in you," and refusing to let go until the world finally believes too.